3 months ago, I started seeing a therapist. I progressed in so many aspects of my life, progressed in business. I progressed in my health. Talked to somebody so I could be mentally better. Needed to communicate better to my spouse, to my kids, to myself. That's what a lot of people don't realize. How we talk to ourselves sets us up for how we talk to everybody else.
Yes. From wine country to cottage country, real estate is all about lifestyle. I'm Andrew Perry, and welcome to That Fine Life. Welcome back to another episode of That Fine Life podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Perry. This is the podcast where we interview entrepreneurs, salespeople, people of influence, and we try to find out what it takes to live that fine life. Today, I've got a very special guest, my good friend, Mario Armani. He owns his own real estate brokerage, Armani Realty. We have been good friends now for a few years. If you listen to this podcast, you know that 90% of my business is agent-to-agent referrals, and 80% of that 90% probably comes from Mario. So I appreciate you coming down, my friend.
You're being too modest, eh?
And you know what? We're going to have a lot of really great chats today. I'm sure we're going to get into, some mental health stuff, some real estate stuff, and, and just kind of check in on each other.
Absolutely. You know me too well. You know exactly what we're going to talk about.
Exactly. And people come on and, they're like, they'll usually reach out beforehand and be like, hey, what are we talking about? What can we prepare? And we don't do that here. It's just, let's let the conversation flow. Let's see where it all, stems from, what I know about you.
Yes.
And I love that, I don't do research on people. For you, I don't need to do research. But for our guests, I don't do research on them. And I don't know if that offends them or not, because I'll ask them questions sometimes. I'll be like, so do you do this? Or what's your thing? And they'll be like, wow, you didn't know? Nobody's ever done that, by the way. But I do that because it helps explain that person's habits, intentions, and goals on an organic, natural level. So welcome. Let's start from the beginning. You just told me off camera that you've been in the business 18 years? 19 years. So next year's your 20th anniversary.
20th anniversary. Never thought that I would make it to like year 10. I always had other goals in mind when I started real estate. I never thought that I was going to be a full-time realtor. I got into it right when HGTV was putting out all these flip shows, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead, buy homes, fix them, sell them, make millions of dollars. Found out very quickly it's extremely, extremely difficult, lost tons of money, and the ball kind of got passed around that I was a realtor. I had my license and just slowly but surely started doing deals, and I became a full-time realtor, and that was the biggest challenge because I felt that because I was doing deals part-time, I'm like, well, if I did this full-time, I'd do 10 times better. Mm-hmm. I had no systems in place. I had no process. I was basically winging it every single day, which funny enough is what most realtors today still do.
Right.
And I found out very quickly again, hey, I'm not going to make money this way. I'm like, the phone stops ringing.
That's right.
And it's pretty scary.
So when 19 years ago, where did you start? In which market? Same?
So one of the biggest challenges of when I really started getting into real estate was I had to go through the 2008 crash that happened in the States. There was a lot of fear over here in Canada. Things took a little bit of a correction here, but it wasn't like what happened in the States, of course. But it just affected our market here, naturally, obviously, because they're our neighbors. So it was just very challenging because of that aspect. But I feel because I went through that market when we had our first big dip back in 2017, everybody was just freaked out. And I was just, this is kind of what I went through already. Yeah. And it's what everybody talks about. It's not just reading things out of a book. It's your own experience is what kind of helps you navigate in future situations.
Mm-hmm. And where were you selling?
In Toronto.
In Toronto.
Yeah. So I've always been selling in Toronto, do a lot of business in Toronto, Etobicoke, Vaughan areas. Yeah. Over the course of the last 5 years, a lot of my clients have started to move north. Obviously, prices of real estate have skyrocketed everywhere. Yeah. So people don't necessarily want to take on more debt. They want nicer houses for the same or less money. So a lot of people naturally started gravitating north.
Yeah. It's interesting how the Innisfil-Barrie market kind of skyrocketed because where I grew up, was a little town called Churchill.
Okay, I know where Churchill.
So on your way to Barrie, if you're taking Yonge Street or Highway 11, whatever you call it, that's where I live. 200 people, surrounded by farmland. 15-minute minimum drive to the grocery store. 15-minute drive. Well, I live pretty close to our school, but for most people, it's 15 plus to get to the school. Our school had 600 kids from grade 1 to grade 8, very, very small. And, we had little towns like Lefroy, Alcona, Belleewert, and these were towns that, how do you say it without being disrespectful? They weren't necessarily a high-valued area. Now, they're some of the highest valued areas and markets in all of Innisfil. Because you've got water. It's everything that I enjoyed as a kid when I was going to Belleewert and Lefroy. Hockey arena, stores, waterfront, marina, those family-run mom and pop shops. And it's interesting that, because you've been in the business so long, you get to see the trend of your clients and where they're going. And it's interesting to me that people from Toronto who have all of these amenities are flocking to these types of areas.
Funny enough, I was in Barrie and Innisfil last night. I was there for about 3 hours with my family. And one thing that we notice every single time that we go up there, everybody's so nice.
Yeah.
Like, people are just friendly. As an example, I was in a plaza. There was a lady who was about to cross the road, but I kind of had the right of way. So I stopped, let her cross the road, just trying to be polite, trying to be a gentleman. She went ahead. She said, thank you. As soon as obviously I let her by, and my wife says to me, if this was in Toronto, she would have probably given you a dirty look and then walked. But this lady, obviously, even though it was your right away, she said, thank you. You let her pass. And it's just different. Went to Home Depot because I had to grab something quickly while in Barrie. And there was a person that was trying to help me. They couldn't find what I was looking for. They contacted somebody else. They came. Everybody's super polite, super respectful. Thank you for shopping with us. We really value and appreciate your business.
Yeah.
Like, I go to Home Depot in Toronto all the time. I don't get treated that way.
They don't even look at you.
No, definitely not.
Okay. Yeah. So in the last 19 years, when was it that you started Armani Realty?
So I started Armani Realty about 4.5 years ago. The reason why I started the brokerage, because a lot of people think that I started the brokerage because I want this huge, massive company.
All right.
And there were actually two big reasons. The first one was because I wanted to incorporate, and I didn't want to do it through a sub brokerage.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you still have to pay all of your fees, all of your dues. Right. And I just didn't want to do everything that I would want to do working for a sub brokerage. I figured if I'm going to pay everything anyways, I might as well just do it for myself and just run the business the way that I want to run it. And the second reason was actually because of that reason, because I wanted to run the company the way that I wanted to run it. So a lot of the times my brokers of records, they would want to get me to do specific things that I didn't agree with.
Yep.
And I like doing things my way. And again, maybe for other people, it's not the correct way, but I have to feel comfortable with it. So I figured, you know what, this is probably a great opportunity to launch this venture and see how it goes. And I have to say that it was probably the best thing I did. One of my biggest fears was I thought that I was with a big name brokerage. I was with a Royal LePage brokerage. And I felt that leaving them, I would lose a lot of credibility not having that big brand behind me.
Right.
And it was actually the opposite. I found an amazing response because people were like, wow, you opened up your own company. Yeah. It was something extremely positive.
And so do you have any aspirations to grow it bigger than it is? Or you find like just doing it, do you have realtors or anything?
Yes. So I have another gentleman that works with me. I had another gentleman who actually left the brokerage a couple of weeks ago. In reality, the way that my brokerage is structured is if you work on my team, you're going to work for my brokerage. So I've been trying to grow it slowly. Yeah. And the reason being is because obviously you manage a lot of people. You know how difficult it is. Very. I want to set up the business in a way where I can scale it. But in order to scale it, I have to figure things out on my own end. Of course. I haven't quite have done that yet. We chatted a little bit before jumping on the podcast that I feel that my business model wasn't the correct business model, and that's something that I'm going to be looking to adapt in the next months and year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I'm coming up through the business, and I could easily start my own brokerage if I wanted to right now. Not only do we have the deals to support it, we do our own marketing. We do this, we do that. But not only, but I love Ryan and Nikki. I love the culture. I love the brokerage, and I fully support it. But Revel is set up in such a way that I can be my own brokerage within it. I just have to, they give us free range. But where I'm going with this is that when I first started, how we actually run a business in terms of real estate, I never agreed with what any of the coaches would tell me, what any of the top realtors would tell me. I saw an opportunity to grow my business exponentially by simply cutting my income in half. And let me tell you where I'm going with that. I knew that if I had a client and I had, people on my team, and that client needed help, I set up the connection. I talk to them. I build rapport. And then I help my other agents succeed by shadowing me, being involved, being independent to some degree. And okay, I just cut my income in half right there. But that time that allowed me to, that time that I gave away, that time that I gained back, I was able to focus on getting more business. Because at the end of the day, we are here to service our clients, but I hate that word, service. We are lead generators. We have to focus on our business. I call it creating value, so that I've created value for somebody else, for the client. Now I can focus on replicating that process, and I was able to grow my brokerage and team from there.
It's so interesting that you're talking about this, because on the way to Barrie and Innisfil yesterday, I was having like a business conversation with my wife, and I said to her, I'm like, the reason why a lot of real estate brokerages, the reason why a lot of realtors themselves, why they don't succeed in the business is because they don't necessarily invest in themselves. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, let's take an agent. If they have a good year, let's say they're making $200,000-$300,000, whatever it is. They might make more, might make less, but they make a good, let's just say that they make a healthy amount of income. They're going to go ahead and they're going to buy cool things. They're going to save some money. They're going to take trips, this and that, the other. I said, imagine if that realtor went ahead, paid for their bills, and every single penny of profit, they invested it back into their business, investing in manpower, investing in advertising, investing in lead generation, marketing, all that. And we don't do that.
Right.
We do not do that.
Right. It's so funny you said that, because we're so alike. It's crazy, because I was on a podcast in Vaughan, when was it? Like 3 weeks ago. And
you were in Vaughan, and you didn't call me to say hello. I'm offended. I'm offended, Andrew.
I had to fit it in the middle of my schedule. It's like an hour back and forth. Anyway.
He's coming up with excuses. He's getting nervous. Look at him.
I know, I'm switching my position. So anyways, they asked me, what I thought an issue of the industry was. And I said exactly that. I said, what I've noticed is that realtors don't invest back into their business. One of the things that I believe in, and I like how you said it, the word invest, because there's a difference between an expense and an investment.
Yes.
And to me, investing in your growth means that you're finding out who, not how, who can help you grow. That's an investment. And what I found was, I was actually on a panel yesterday with Scott Benson. Do you know Scott Benson?
No.
So Scott Benson has like the #1 team in Burlington, Oakville, and Hamilton. Okay. He was with Sutton. Now he's with Real. And he said something very interesting, because last year, remember when we did the Monday mental health with you?
Yes.
So I was talking on, so Mario invited me on an Instagram Live to talk about men's mental health. And hey, interesting enough, you're coming on because it's Mental Health Month for men, which nobody knows because nobody cares. We'll get into that a little later. But we were talking about how, last year, and although I'm going to tell you the story that I'm going to tell you, we had our best year ever. But at the time, it didn't feel like we were going to have our best year ever. We were goose egging left, right, center, $50K a month, $50K a month, $50K a month. Expenses are coming out. Expenses, the budgets, they're not even getting looked at right now, because although I would love to save money, I thought that I had to throw money at advertising and lead generation, which wasn't working, in order to grow the business just so we can close deals. So Scott Benson said something interesting. He said, lead with revenue. So what he means by that is that if your revenue is at zero, you can't be spending thousands of dollars trying to create new business. You have to pull up your socks and find cost-effective ways to get that zero up to 10, 20, 50K. And so essentially what I'm talking about is I'm talking about realtors, business owners. Our number one job is lead generation. Relying on online leads doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to convert them. That's a 96 months, 12-month process.
100%.
And so where is your new relationships coming from? Where's your pipeline getting filled? Is it door knocking? Is it database? You need to figure that out. And no realtor wants to do that except for the smart ones.
When I opened up the brokerage, when I hired my first realtor, I tried to make him understand. I said, listen, don't do what every other realtor does and just become salespeople. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, very simple. Let's say you take a trip. You go to Mexico. You're there for 2 weeks, having a great time. Are you making money? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, are you making money when you're in Mexico for 2 weeks? And he's like, well, he started like, he didn't understand. And I said, the answer is no. I said, because you can't do transactions while you're there. You can't show property. You can't list. You can't do anything. Yes. I said, so you need to transition from being a salesperson to being a business and think of things like a business. So when this gentleman, Scott, that you're mentioning says lead with revenue, he's 100% correct, because if you look at, let's say, Fortune 500 companies, why do they get in debt? Why do they need bailouts? Because they have credit, they have profit, and on those months and years where they're struggling, what do these guys do? They're throwing money at the problem, as opposed to finding these cost-effective ways so they don't put themselves in a hole. So this suggestion that this gentleman made, Scott, amazing, incredible.
And again, I'm happy that you said that, because I just went to Florida. It was not necessarily a vacation. It was more of a business and investment trip. And
you had some fun though, right?
Yeah, we did. We did. Amazing steakhouses down there.
Crazy.
But I think I sold like 3 or 4 houses, and one of them was a listing that we listed and sold in that same day while I was away for full price.
Why though? Because you set it up so your business can function without you.
Exactly.
And just dropping a name that we were chatting about before the podcast started, Mark Ferris.
Right.
Mark Ferris has his team running on all cylinders. You go to Barrie, you go to Innisfil, you can't drive 2 blocks without seeing that guy's sign.
Exactly.
And the guy's in Naples, Florida.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's creating that culture of realtors. And one thing that I learned, I want to tell you a really quick story, and then we'll get into some mental health stuff. So I was with a really good friend of mine, Brady Thrasher. He owns a Remax in Windsor and Fort Lauderdale. We've become good friends over the years, sending him business to Florida and chatting about, how to run brokerages and stuff. And, we're out for dinner, and he's like, what are you guys going home? What do you guys want to do? And I'm like, we're good, man. It's like 10:30. He's like, let me make a phone call. Have you ever heard of Patrick Bet-David?
No.
So Patrick Bet-David just became a minority owner in the New York Yankees, by the way, but he owns an insurance company and a company called Valuetainment. This guy's huge. Look him up after this podcast. He's the guy who interviews Andrew Tate, Tucker, he has these massive podcasts. And he made one call to his team and said, hey, look, I've got some people visiting from Canada. Can you open up your office right now so we could go have a cigar? So we go to this guy's office to have a cigar, and I'm not expecting anything. I'm expecting to go smoke a cigar in this, $1 million studio. So we get there. A woman shows up. Her name's Taylor. Very smart, very bright, super asking me questions, just building relationships right from the beginning. Super nice. Next thing you know, another guy comes up, Leo. And another guy, and another guy, and another guy. Their entire sales team dropped. One guy was eating dinner with his family. 10:30, that's a little late, but he's a lot younger than me. I go to bed at 9 o'clock. So here we are, 4 or 5 guys surrounded by a sales team of like 6, 7 people who dropped everything. at 10:30 at night just to sit and have a conversation with us. I don't even know what they were selling at the point. I didn't even know we were there potentially as a client. They just, and they never let on to that until we actually talked about sales processes, because you don't go to Patrick Bett's studio and meet all these people and not talk about sales and processes and entrepreneurship. I was blown away. I messaged my entire leadership team the very next day. I said, this is what a sales team does. This is what people that care about their future do. When there's opportunity, I'm not saying you need to go out, say, hey, yeah, my buyer wants to see a house at 11 o'clock. I'm definitely going to show them. No, but when there's an opportunity to capitalize, you go, you capitalize. I was blown away.
And that's the problem that I find with realtors, that they don't want to put in the work. They just don't want to put in the work. And the problem is that we could have a great wave. That wave could last a few months. It could last a few years. People kind of just grow financially and their mindset changes. And most of the times it's not for the better. Mm-hmm. Instead of investing back into their business, setting up processes, like you said, you get an opportunity. For example, if I'm a newer realtor or a realtor that is not really transacting, getting to do an open house is an opportunity.
Huge.
Is an opportunity.
But it's on a Sunday.
Listen, to get to where I am, I literally worked and continue
Saturday,
working
Sunday.
7 days a week.
Yep.
Like 16, 17 hours a day. From the second I wake up, I'm working, to the second I go to bed, I'm working. I'm pretty sick, by the way, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. It makes me happy.
Me too.
And at the end of the day, I think that you just have to do what makes you happy. And I get it that not everybody's going to want to do that, but I have that philosophy that you have to live a few years of your life like most won't, to enjoy the rest of your life like most dream of. And that's where people fail to realize that it's not going to happen unless you put in that work.
Yeah. And you know what? I attribute that, like, there's two sides, just like there's two sides to everything. Right? You have people like Gary Vee in the hustle mode, hustle. And then you've got people that, hey, you need to enjoy your life, man. Like, just relax. Go on that vacation.
Sounds
Take
really
that
soothing,
time
by
off.
the way. Huh?
Yeah. I have more anxiety trying to chill out than I do working. So the problem is that we fall into two sides of extreme cultures where it's like, look, okay, if you want to live how the top 1% live, and you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck, your early years are your earning years. Yeah, okay, I'm a father of 3. Does it suck sometimes that, I've got to run out and, potentially miss a lunch or a dinner? Yeah, but I'm also really good at managing my time so that I am home at 4 o'clock. Okay, I might not be fully in tune the entire time I'm there. However, Saturday and Sunday I am. And I'm like you. I do work 17 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, but it's very, very minimal after 4, 5, 6 p.m. And it's just responding to people. But those responses light up my mind. And like there's an opportunity. I helped that person. I provided value to that person. They provided value to me. This is great. But most people aren't willing to do it. Phones off by 6, no phones at this, no phones at that. Okay, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but if you want to come up here, you can't live your life that way.
Yeah, you have to make changes. And funny enough, I put out an Instagram reel before coming here, and it talked about just being accessible. If you're a buyer, clients want to call you. If you're a seller, there's realtors and potential buyers that are interested in your property. You have to make yourself accessible. And just realtors don't get that. Calling you back like 2-3 days later, texting you back like 7-8 hours later.
That's already gone.
I get it that we're busy. I get it. Yep. Everybody's busy. And I also understand that even though we're self-employed, we should have a life as well. Yeah. I get it. But there's certain things that you just can't do in this profession. And if you don't do them, you shouldn't be in this profession.
I agree. Shifting gears a bit. Just from everything that I know about you, from our phone conversations, but even before them, the way you present yourself on social media, which is incredibly authentic, by the way.
Thank you.
It gives me the perception that you actually care. and you care about not only the profession, the industry, but you care about your clients. And the way I can tell that is because the content that you put out is very honest. You unravel our shortfalls as realtors, what to look out for, but also the reasons why you would need to actually work with a professional. You do it without calling people out. And here's just another tidbit too. Everybody who I've talked to about you says he's as real as the content that he puts out, which is very, very hard to find.
It's a hard thing because unfortunately we're in a society that when you're honest and you're truthful, you're not always going to be loved. You're going to be criticized in some cases, but there's certain things that I just can't let slide. And I think I'm learning to be a lot more diplomatic and sometimes taking a step back and not saying things, because if I actually said every single little thing that was on my mind, it would be bad news for a lot of people. But more than anything, my main goal with my content is to educate buyers and sellers. That's my goal. I want people to understand a lot of these things that are not really visible. My best friend said to me years ago when he purchased his property, he's like, if I didn't know you, I wouldn't know how to choose a realtor, because he got to see with all the transactions that he's done, how unprofessional the industry is and how low that bar really is. And he's like, you know what? He's like, just from like watching your videos, from the things that you tell me, how you explain things, he's like, I'm really able to understand and see where the shortfalls are, and I'm not able to make those mistakes because of you. Right. So it's awesome that I was able to kind of transmit that you grasp that. And that's what it is. Again, like I'm not trying to be popular. I'm not trying to be part of the trends. I've actually done the opposite. I've always wanted to do something that is completely different, which has been a mistake in the past, because there's a lot of things that, you know what I mean, I kind of pioneered. Yeah. And because everybody started doing them, I stopped doing them, which was a big mistake. I should have continued doing them until I found the next best thing and then did that, right? So again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my business models were incorrect. I'm slowly trying to change that. And I think that life is all about growing and just seeing what works and what doesn't and going forward.
Yeah. I think the people who think that they have it fully figured out is, sadly mistaken. Because you should never have that mentality that, yep, this is it. It's perfect. It's running. We're good. I never think that way. My downfall mentally is that whenever we're doing good, I feel like we're not doing enough, and how can we be better? And then obviously when we're not doing well, everybody's like, how could we do better? But even when we're doing well, it's something inside of me that, like, I think right now, we're like number 2 or number 3 or whatever in the market, but we're doing so well that I'm like, why? Questioning it. Why are we doing so good? Is it the brand? Is it the market? Is it this? Is it that? Is our team? And it's just, and it's not that I think we don't have the talent. It's that I'm thinking, what's next? How do we elevate from here? But through your content, I could tell that you have a lot of empathy for people and a lot of empathy for your clients. So how important, because I mean, man, you're in amazing shape too, but how important is it to not only take care of your physical health, but your mental health?
So you mentioned just 2 minutes ago that you feel that I'm a real guy. Everybody that you've talked to about me says to you that what he shows is how he is. Being very transparent, something I'm going to share with you that nobody else knows except for my wife and maybe a couple of close friends. About three months ago, I started seeing a therapist. And kind of strange to say it, to tell everybody out there this information, but I feel that I progressed in so many aspects of my life. I progressed in business. I progressed in my health. And even there's other things that I progressed, but I said, I do think of things in a different way, but I think that maybe it would be a great idea to talk to somebody so I could be mentally better, mentally stronger.
Yep.
These last 3 months have completely changed my life in realizing how much I needed to communicate better to my spouse, to my kids, to myself. That's what a lot of people don't realize. How we talk to ourselves sets us up for how we talk to everybody else.
Yes.
And for me, it's just super important just to be better every single day in every aspect of my life. So again, sometimes obviously you can't do everything. There's going to be a few months where maybe your fitness is not the best, or you're not eating as great as you would like to.
Yeah.
Or you know what, maybe your business kind of, because you can't be everywhere at all times.
Right.
But the idea is to always grow, to always get better, and just to, again, advance.
So, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. But you know what? I kind of look at a therapist as, you know, a variation of a life coach.
100%. And just people are just scared. They're just scared to, like, I've always wanted to talk to somebody, but I realized that why I didn't, I just kept making excuses that I was busy, I didn't need it. And I didn't go talk to somebody because there was things going terribly wrong in my life. It was mainly because I said to myself, well, am I really happy? I have all these things around me that the reasons why I should be happy.
Yeah.
I have an amazing wife, amazing kids,
Yeah.
a successful business. I should be the happiest guy in the world. But why am I not that person?
So then let me ask you this, because you just said something there that sparked something in my mind. How do you know that you are genuinely happy, genuinely in love, and genuinely in a good spot? Because yes, I have those same thoughts. I think to myself, okay, business is doing good. I'm happy. Am I genuinely happy, or am I just happy because, you know, it's what we're supposed to feel in this situation? My wife and I love each other. We look at each other every day. Sometimes it's like, is this genuine, or is this just because we're here and we have kids and we're living in the same house? I look at our leadership team. Am I genuinely happy in what they're achieving, or do I just not want to admit something to myself? So it's weird. I'm like, it's this, how do you know that you're being authentic to yourself, and if you know what you're doing is the right thing? And so that's interesting.
I think to a certain degree, we don't know.
Right.
In my case, I feel that I was so busy with work, with all these projects, because I like to put a lot on myself.
Yeah.
It's just the way that I've always been.
It's the only way.
I want to do more every single day. For me to relax, it's like extremely difficult. But I've been learning to do it over the last 6 months. I've started to understand that, I'm not 25 years old anymore. I'm going to be 39 in a week. Like, I'm not that same guy. I don't have that same energy. I need to, if I want to basically be fast-paced all the time, I have to take a little bit of a break. I have to relax. I have to unwind. So it's almost like athletes, for example, when they're 25, they play a certain way, they train a certain way, and then when they get older, they have to shift their eating, they have to shift their habits, because they can't perform at that same level without making those changes. This is kind of what I feel I'm going through, that I need to, if I want to continue performing at this high level, I need to change my lifestyle. I need to change the way that I think, because real estate, as you know, it's a mentally and emotionally difficult job. Forget about the fact that you need to know this, that, the other. You need to be a good communicator and marketer. And people think that real estate is all about sales. But emotionally, it's something that, like, just, and mentally, it's just an extremely challenging job. And if you're not basically in a good mental state, you're going to have a hard time in this business, because and even if you are in a good mental state, the business it'll fuck with you.
It will find a way.
It'll find
knock
a way.
you off that happiness
100%. 100%.
So how important is it then? Because I mean, you've been, a fairly big advocate on mental health, especially for men. How important is it, you think, for men to, kind of open up about these things?
I think it's extremely important, because as men, we're seen as, you need to be tough, you need to be strong. Like, men are not seen as sensitive people, but we're people. At the end of the day, we're people. Whether you're a man, woman, doesn't matter what you are. You're a person. You have feelings, you have emotions, You have the right to be happy, to be sad. You should feel open to talk about it. I think that in 2023, I think everything's on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's on the table. That's
Yeah.
the truth, right?
Yeah.
So again, that stigma needs to be just removed, because at the end of the day, it's okay. It's okay to be soft. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel happy. You just have to, the first step to change is recognizing in yourself that you're not well.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You just have to admit to yourself that you're not well.
Yeah.
And I realized why I kind of made that discovery is, as soon as I started realizing that, okay, I have a lot of things going on and I'm like, I don't feel well. I got to stop. So there's when things started, like some of my projects started kind of coming to a close, I didn't take on new things.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to a point where all the noise, everything got quiet. And when it got quiet, it was very scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was very scary because you're like, wait a minute, things with my wife aren't as good as I thought.
Right.
Things with my kids are not as good as I thought. My business, it's really not as great as I thought it was. And I'm like, okay, now that you're kind of seeing the light, it was an awesome thing, because now slowly you start to better everything.
Right.
And everything just starts to get better by just very few little things that you need to do. But again, we need to do them.
Yeah. I think about that a lot when I am focused on the business, almost 90%.
Yeah.
Of the day. I try to battle with myself with the fact that, look, if I can just put this in now and truly live like the top 1% from, by the time my kids are 10 and up, just give it 5 more years and just really hustle, put that work in. And then my wife would be like, well, hey, you need to put more focus on the kids, more focus on me. And you're like, how do I effectively do that? And I have a business set up where I don't have to work on the business, but it's not about that. It's not that if I don't do it, my business is going to fail. It's that right now, and again, my kids, my wife, my personal life does fulfill me greatly, but I feel that it has to be a fair fulfillment from both sides. And if I'm focusing too much on one thing, for me, it just doesn't work. The business is not a business. It's a hobby. It's not something that it's something that I'm passionate about.
But that's just being an entrepreneur. I always bring up Elon Musk, because Elon Musk has not one company, he's got several very successful companies. Yeah. And the guy's not doing it for money. He's doing it because they're passions of his. And once he gets in it, he goes all in, right? So I can totally empathize and understand where you're coming from, because I'm the same way. If I'm going to make a sandwich, I'm going to make the best sandwich. I'm going to put passion and love into that sandwich. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, for you, you're not seeing it as I'm clocking in and clocking out, or I'm trying to make more money. You're like, you're just doing this next task to the best of your ability, and you're trying to be the best in that moment. And then whatever happens the next day, the week after, you deal with it when it comes up, right?
Right.
So I understand where you're coming from, and I don't think you should feel bad about that. But to a certain degree, I was just about to say balance, which I hate that, because in reality, to me, balance doesn't exist. You have 24 hours in the day, and at the end of the day, whether you figure out a way to clone yourself, you can only do one thing at one time. So this is where kind of systems and structure, and obviously like it takes you to a point where you kind of start leaving one aspect and going into another aspect, right? And again, like you mentioned, sometimes you can't do those dinners, you can't do that time with your kids. So for example, in my case, I'm in the same boat as you, right? So I try to make an effort when I can, let's say, to take them to school in the morning. Yeah. To pick them up from school, right? Even if I see them for half an hour, 45 minutes, right? It's just, you have to try to do all those little extra things in order to...
And so I do that. I'm with my kids for a couple hours in the morning before I go, and I'm always with them when I come home. It's just, and I'm having fun. They're on my lap. We're wrestling. It's just sometimes in my mind, am I fully there? And I don't know if I am. I feel like I am.
But in many cases, you're probably not, Andrew, because I'm in the same boat as you. I know for sure I'm not. And my biggest challenge, and one of the biggest things that I've struggled with in the past years, was feeling like an inadequate father. all the time. Just like, let's say, sitting with my wife watching TV, or let's say about to go to bed and just talking to her and starting to cry because I feel like a bad father. Not because I am a bad father, but because I'm not putting in as much time as I feel I should. And then my wife kind of stops me and she says, and I have an amazing partner, a very supportive partner, which is very important. And she's like, you don't realize how much you actually do for your kids. And that's kind of, sometimes we need to, and again, these are all things that I've been learning the last 3 months, that we don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we do. So when you were mentioning that we're number one, but why are we number one? Is it because of this or because of that? But in reality, I guarantee you it's probably because you've done things correctly.
Right.
Not because of your brand or your marketing. It's because the combination of all that hard work that you did is the reason why you're number one. And the same thing with the kids. She says to me all the time, she's like, you're there all the time for the kids. Even though there's times where you don't see them, or like some weeks where you're not as active with them. She goes, if you kind of take a look at, let's say, how much time you spend with them on a monthly basis, I guarantee you it's probably more than the majority of dads.
Right.
But I don't see it.
Right. No, it's true. You know, I don't miss any hockey. I sometimes miss soccer because it's at a weird time. It's at 5. But yeah, I don't, and because I have baseball after that. But anyways, it's very rare that I miss big moments. And, you know, I don't know. It's just one of those things where you're sitting there and you're like, you've got your family surrounding you, but all you can think about is like, what's next in the business? How do I elevate myself? And it's just, it's difficult to balance.
You're an entrepreneur who loves what they do.
Yeah.
That's all it is. You can't shake it. You're going to be like that until the day that you die. Even if you shut down your business, you retire, you're still going to be thinking about all kinds of things because that's just the way that you're wired.
That's true.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And again, like the biggest thing we have to realize is that we're our own best friend and we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah. Interesting. What can we talk about, just to wrap it up, in terms of advice for struggling realtors, struggling men that think they might be going through something, and, you know, what's the best, you know, piece of advice that you can give somebody like that, I guess?
So to struggling men, I would say that just be open to hearing criticism and to just talk to somebody, whether it's a friend, a professional, a family member. You just have to be willing to accept somebody telling you things that you may not want to hear.
Right.
And don't just be quick. Just don't be quick and say, oh, I don't do that, or that's not me.
Yeah.
Like, just listen.
Yeah.
Don't say anything. Just listen and think of it. Because I think that if you kind of take a step back and you really look and observe at what these people actually tell you about you, you'll probably learn a few things about yourself.
Right. I think that's great.
For realtors, I think if you're a new realtor, if I was starting the business tomorrow, or I was in the business for a year or two and I wasn't doing well, I would definitely try to find a mentor. I would try to find a team that would actually help me. The problem is a lot of teams, they just want you to kind of plug and play into their system,
right?
Just so you can kind of help the team, but they're not really teaching you what to do. And that's the problem. So I would try to find like a mentor, somebody that would kind of try to guide you, but you have to be willing to work at it. And a lot of people, they say that they're willing to work, but when it comes down to it, they're not willing to do it in many cases. And that's the issue.
Right. I agree. So, Mario, thanks for coming on, buddy.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
You gotta shake my hand. Come on, man.
Sorry.
Fine life, buddy.
I know. So where can everybody find you if they want to reach out and talk?
On Instagram, ArmaniSells.ca. You can always call or text me, 647-448-4939. I'm always available. And thank you so much. I really, really admire you. You talked about me at the beginning of the conversation. You didn't give me a chance to talk about you. So I'm going to do that now. I followed you for a long time. One of the reasons that I reached out to you to be able to send clients your way was because I also felt you were a very authentic guy. I loved how you just presented yourself, and I just kind of felt that connection right away. And every single client that I've talked to that I've sent your way, they just have nothing but the best things to say. So everything that I kind of felt about you before ended up coming to fruition when I sent my clients to you, and they kind of, and obviously over the years we've we've grown. Our report's gotten a lot stronger. And you're somebody that I admire so much in the industry. And I actually don't say that about too many people because I dislike a lot of realtors.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate
you're awesome,
that.
man. Honestly, you really are.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. And everybody, if you're listening, don't forget to like, share, comment, but most importantly, if you could please leave us a review on Spotify so it helps get our message out to more and more people who want to change their lives and start living that fine life.